Ever wonder what happened as a buyer once you're under contract? Great news. You're about to find out. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Realty Podcast with Anthony Griffin, Keller Williams 1, Greensboro, North Carolina, Kim Mathis and Associates. And today I wanted to come back with a podcast that's focused on what happens once you get under contract on the home you wanted to buy. Just like last week, I actually broke this up into three different categories. We've got your due diligence and inspection period. We'll call the second one pending status, and the third is closing day. So there's a few different things that I want to mention before we dive into these three different sections. One, you're going to experience some short periods of time that are going to be incredibly frantic when you're going to have a lot of things due, a lot of things to turn into your lender, to sign for your agent, to make sure that everything is going smoothly during the transaction. That's okay. It's expected. It can be a little stressful. Make sure you lean on those professionals that you hired to get you through this process. Meaning, reach out to your real estate agent. Make sure that you reach out to your lender. Ask questions if you have them so we can make sure we're answering them. Also, let us as your agent be the shield. If you happen to have questions regarding the house, questions regarding inspections, or the loan process, and you don't feel comfortable asking them yourself, that's okay. Ask us as your agent. We have no problem asking those questions for you to get the answers that you need. But just like having long periods of or short periods of frantic time, you're also going to have some long waiting periods where it seems like nothing is happening. This is when a lot of the behind the scenes work is done by the lender. There's not a whole lot of extra information they can provide. So they're not going to be giving you a whole bunch of updates on a daily basis. But never assume that no new news is good news. Always, always, always check and follow up if you have questions. If it's been a few days and you just happen to be a little bit curious about how things with your loan are going, call your loan officer, call your realtor. We'll be more than happy to check and find out for you. Also, loan officers and realtors should be taking this additional time to make sure that they're following up with you. So don't be surprised if you get a quick call saying, hey, just touching base, making sure everything's going well for you. Everything's fine on this end. We're moving like we should be. Those things are supposed to happen. They can help to relieve a lot of the stress that comes in with the home buying process, especially since the time period we're looking at is anywhere from a month to a month and a half. It's a long time to wait. And if you're not getting a lot of information, it can be very, very stressful. So if you have questions, ask and make sure you get the answers that you're looking for. So, first step in the home buying process once you're under contract is the due diligence and inspection period. This is going to be the time frame where the home inspections are going to happen. So here in Greensboro, North Carolina, there are a few different types of inspections that are always recommended. Of course, the whole home, where they will look at everything from the roof all the way down to the foundation for you. You may want to consider things like wood destroying insects, an HVAC inspection, depending on how old the HVAC system is. Then it can drill down a little bit deeper and to be determined by if you're on public sewer and water or if you are on well and septic. If you have a septic system, you definitely want to have that septic system inspected and viewed. It may also need pumping. With the well system, you want to make sure that you have a well water test for checking for any particulates in the water. This time frame, this inspection period and time frame normally takes about 21 days. It can fluctuate a little bit, but for the most part in the Greensboro area, most agents are going to request somewhere in that 3-week time frame just to make sure we can line up all inspections and also give time for the home appraisal. If you are getting a loan on this house that you are under contract on, your lender will most likely want to do an appraisal to judge the value of the house. The appraisal process is fairly straightforward, even though you don't actually get to attend the appraisal. The appraiser does send a very detailed report with all of their findings and their estimation of the price or the value of the home. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is the appraiser does work for the lender and not directly for you. So keep in mind that there are things that can come up during an appraisal that that may benefit your lender, but there are ways to work through that would be determined by if there is a difference in price between what you go under contract on and what the appraiser finds as the value of the home. It may be a FHA or a VA loan where there are some safety concerns, or some concerns with the electrical or structural that need to be addressed before the loan can proceed to actually close. And these things are designed as safeguards to make sure that it's a quality property that is being lent on, but also to make sure that you're in a safe home. So make sure you go those extra steps to understand and ask any questions that you have about the appraisal. Just like with the home inspection uh, does tend to take a little bit of time for the inspector to complete. Normally, a home inspection takes about 3 to 4 hours. The inspectors will normally try to get that report back to you within 1 to 2 days, depending on when the inspection was done. Make sure you give them time to actually process and give you all of the information. It's always a great idea to be present for at least the half hour of the home inspection, so that way the inspector can go over any glaring details that you may have questions on. Also, there's a lot of state required and state mandated information inside of a home inspection report. Even on a brand new house, your inspection report might be 25 or 30 pages long, and that's common. Because of the state required and state mandated information that is put in there, the home inspection report can get very wordy. It can get kind of scary and make it sound like the house is going to eat you while you sleep in it. It's not, unless you get one of those really, really weird houses. So be on the lookout for those. But for the most part, it's there to give you all of the information and to check all of the pieces of the house that you're probably not going to go to inspect. Most people don't go into their attics unless it's a walk up and you happen to store your Christmas decorations or Halloween decorations up there. Most people don't go into the crawl space or into the to an unfinished section of the basement unless a breaker is loose, or maybe you hear a weird noise or something along those lines, or store some yard tools. So it's places that you don't enter often. So it's always good to make sure you get a fresh pair of eyes on that, especially before you buy the house, because most likely you're not going to look under there again unless you absolutely have to. So once we pass your due diligence and inspection period, now we're in pending status. So in pending status, this is kind of that time frame where you don't see a lot of communication. And really, the reason for it is because a lot of it is done behind the scenes. This is when underwriting is rechecking to make sure that your income statements are correct, making sure that your job status is correct. They're going to re review your credit history and credit report. All of that happens on the behind the scenes end. And because of that, the lender tends to be a little bit more quiet because your loan officer isn't the person who's doing all of this work. They have to hand the file off to other departments, and they're somewhat at the whim of how quickly other departments can get the information back to them. So don't automatically assume that it's your loan officer who's just kind of dragging their feet. They might be waiting on a supervisor's approval or an underwriter's approval or final stamp to say that the file's good. But always, 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 if you have questions about the status of your loan, if you have questions about how things are going during the inspection period, or if it looks like we're going to close on time, ask your realtor, ask your lender. Once we finally get past the pending time frame, now it's closing day. And for a lot of buyers, this is going to be one of the most interesting days, and it's going to really seem like a blur. Depending on what time frame you're actually going to be signing your documents and signing your paperwork, you may do a pre-home closing walkthrough either the day before or the day of closing to make sure that the sellers got everything out of the house, did any needed or necessary repairs that were negotiated during the inspection period. Uh, Also, to make sure that Anything that was supposed to be left in the house is left, and make sure that you don't have any random stuff that's left in the garage or in the attic. So this is a great time to make sure the house is exactly what it's supposed to be before you sign your paperwork. Then you're going to go over to the closing attorney's office and you're going to sign documents until your hand hurts. It's going to take a little bit of time, but 30-45 minutes, depending on how many questions you have for the closing attorney. This brings up another great point. If you have questions during the closing, make sure you ask. Ask your agent, ask the closing attorney who's there. They can help to guide you in the right direction and answer those questions for you. Once you sign all of the documents, you would think that that is it. You get your keys in your hand and you can go move in right away. Not quite. Keep in mind there is a deed recording process, especially in the Greensboro, North Carolina area, that can take a couple of hours depending on the time of the closing. If you signed all of your documents at 9 a.m., maybe around lunchtime you'll be fully on record. If you signed your documents around lunch, maybe 3 to 4 o'clock, right before closing time for the day, you'll get notice that you're on record. When you hear that you're on record or that the file is settled, what that means is you are now the deeded owner of the home, and you're actually allowed to get the keys to the house at that point. Some sellers will hand the keys off to the closing attorney and request that the closing attorney not give the keys to the buyer until we're actually on record. Some may ask that the real estate agent to hold those keys for you until you're on record. The main thing is on closing day, try to avoid setting up any necessary moves. Always give yourself that window to start moving anything in the day after. Also, make sure during this contract to closing period that you are contacting all of the utility companies. So if you have if it's an electrical company, you've got to get in contact with. Maybe you've got to get in contact with the water and sewer department for the city. Maybe you've got to get in touch with the natural gas company. Make sure that you have all of those utilities switched over to your name as soon as possible. In our area, it is common for sellers to keep the utilities on up to and including the day of closing. However, that is not always the case. It's not a hard, fast rule that you can expect it. So, there have been times when I have seen and heard about buyers who have signed all of their paperwork, got their keys on record, they go to move stuff into the house, and they realize they don't have any power. Don't let that be you. Make sure you contact your utility companies. If you don't know who those utility companies are, ask your agent. We'll be able to provide you with all the information you need to make it a smooth and relatively painless move in process. So that is the layout of what happens once you go under contract. Again, depending on if you're getting a loan, this is going to be a 30 to 45-day window. If you're a cash buyer, maybe it's a little bit closer to that 30-day window or less, depending on what kind of timeframes or restrictions you have, or what kind of time frame the seller may need. But again, just some quick points to go over. Make sure you contact those utility companies. Make sure if you have a question, you ask it. Don't assume that no news is good news. And if you happen to need any help in the buying or the selling process of your home, click the link and email me directly. I'd love to help out. I'd love to talk to you guys more directly. Make sure I answer any questions that you have. I look forward to talking to you next time. Have a great week, everybody.